Yo, Marilyn, do you like dystopian novels?
Dystopian novels? That's so 1984. Aloha. My name is Marilyn, Maya. You pick which one fits me, the baby boomer booktuber, and welcome back to my channel. I've been away for about a week because I wasn't feeling well. I've had the COVID shot and then some headache issues, and well, it's boring. But after last month's craziness, I don't like to say crazy, but wild ride through 13 mystery books, I was a little overwhelmed. So I'm taking it easy this month, and I read 4 books, and 4 books that were really important to me. And this is my wrap up, so let's get at it. My first book that I'm going to talk about has been all over Booktube, and it's called Luster by Raven Leilani. And I loved the heck out of this book. It's had a mixed review, mostly a good review, but mixed on Booktube. It's won, I think it's going to win a lot of prizes. It's already shortlisted for the Women's Prize and long listed for other prizes. I have a different take on what many others are calling a millennial type of book. So let me just read you a little of the blurb, and then I'll tell you why I agree or disagree. So this book, Luster, we follow Edie, and this says she's stumbling through her 20s, sharing a subpar apartment in Bushwick. Bushwick is very close to where I was brought up, so I can understand that. She's clocking in and out of her admin job at a publishing company, making a series of inappropriate sexual choices. She is also haltingly giving heat and air to the art that simmers inside of her. And then she meets Eric, a digital archivist with a family in New Jersey, including a wife who is an autopsist. She does autopsies. And she has agreed to an open marriage with rules. This is not a very good blurb on the book, in my humble opinion. All right, not so humble opinion. First of all, I don't think that it's only a millennial book. I just commented on another person's Booktube channel that I felt very close to a lot of the events that happened in the book. I don't think she's stumbling through her 20s, she's hurling through her 20s. And it's not because of it's not only because of she lives in Bushwick fighting the rats and making inappropriate choices at work, where she sleeps with half of the guys in the publishing company, and you know, that's not the only reason. This woman has mental issues. She comes from a chaotic family background, and this book could have been written at any time, not only the millennial. I'm a baby boomer, and a lot of the events in this book reminded me of events that either I know people who went through them or I personally went through them. It's also being parried about as dark humor. There's a part in this book, and I don't think it's a spoiler, but I'm going to give you 3 seconds before I go into that part, in case you haven't read it and you think it's a spoiler. But it happens very quickly in the book. So here's my 3 seconds. Before I go into the spoiler, I'm going to read you the first paragraph. Small, short. The first time we have sex, we are fully clothed at our desks during working hours, bathed in blue computer light. He is uptown processing a new bundle of microfiche, and I am downtown handling corrections for a new Labrador detective manuscript. He tells me what he ate for lunch and asks if I can manage to take off my underwear in my cubicle without anyone noticing. His messages come with impeccable punctuation. He is fond of words like taste and spread. The empty text field is full of possibilities. Of course I worry about IT remoting into my computer or my internet history warranting yet another disciplinary meeting with HR, but the risk, the thrill of a third pair of unseen eyes, the idea that someone in the office with that sweet post-lunch break optimism might come across the thread and see how tenderly Eric and I have built this private world. Okay, so this is wonderful writing, and it shows from the beginning how courageous Raven Leilani is. So Eric is the married guy that she's having an affair with, and he's an older man, she's about 23, and she becomes infatuated with him. Now this is just the part of the spoiler that I'm going to give. They go through, he doesn't really contact her for a long time after their first meeting. And she ends up going to their house. He lives with his wife in New Jersey. And she goes there uninvited and opens the door. The door is open, and she walks in and she's surprised by the wife. That's the spoiler. It's not really a spoiler because it's in pretty close to the beginning of the book. I read on Goodreads and elsewhere that this is the dark humor. It never could have happened. Well, it happens. It happened not only during millennial times, it happened in baby boomer times. I was brought up in a Brooklyn project. I, at 15, had a boyfriend. I didn't know he was married, and his wife, or the woman he was living with, she came to visit me and told me he was married, and asked me to come to their house and surprise him, which I did with bringing my friend along. But that was a very dangerous thing I did. And I don't think that it's impossible for this character, especially with her background of mental illness. Her mother has committed suicide. We know this from the beginning. Her father has died, and she has went through so many terrible experiences. So why wouldn't she go to the wife's house and think that was appropriate when it's already noted in the book that she has slept with so many of the people that she works with. Eventually she gets fired. This is in the beginning of the book too, for inappropriate behavior, and she moves in with Eric and his wife, which a lot of people think could never happen again. Does anybody watch reality TV? Okay, I'm guilty, I do. But I also know that these things do happen in real life. So enough of, so I don't think it's only a millennial novel. I don't think it's dark humor. And it's a black woman's experience, not only a black woman's experience, but it does have a lot of racial undertones to this that I really appreciated. What I will say is that the writing is beautiful. The prose is exquisite. The way she describes her art and the way she fights to have her art recognized. I'm 70, and I know that as a writer, as an artist, all we want is to be recognized for our art. And that's what she wants, like anybody else does. I also love how this book is formatted. It's formatted in little paragraphs that are very easy to digest for almost anyone. I read this I couldn't put this book down, and I read it really quickly. I can't say enough about her writing. You have to find out for yourself. I encourage everyone to read this book. If you want to know about life from a different perspective than just a vanilla, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but a different type of life that other people have lived for a long time. This is a debut novel, and I want to read everything that Raven Leilani writes. So I guess this was a review. So 5 big stars. The next book I read was Redhead by the Side of the Road, and it couldn't be more different from Luster. This is by Ann Tyler, and she's a hit or miss author for me, and when she gets it, she really gets it. For me, a lot of people like everything she wrote, a lot of people don't. She's been writing for a long time. She's almost 80 years old. This is, I think this might be her last book, but I'm not sure. The blurb on this says, we follow Micah Mortimer, a creature of habit, a self-employed tech expert, superintendent of his Baltimore apartment building, seems content, leading a steady, circumscribed life. But one day his routines are blown apart when his woman friend tells him she's facing eviction, and a teenager shows up at Micah's door claiming to be his son. This was a very breezy read for me, and I'll tell you what I didn't like about it first. I felt the writer's process of writing too clearly. Maybe because I'm a writer and I study writing and I critique writers. At the beginning of the book, she starts the hook with an omniscient narrator. I'll just read you the first sentence. You have to wonder what goes through the mind of a man like Micah Mortimer. He lives alone, he keeps to himself, his routine is etched in stone. I really didn't like that because I'm thinking that the whole book was going to be like that, but no. By the second paragraph, we're in Micah's point of view. And so, when the inciting incident happened, I felt it. When the rising action happened, I felt it. The dilemma, crisis, I won't go into it because it's a spoiler, but it says here that somebody shows up at his house claiming he might be his son. And the climax, everything was in perfect alignment, and I felt it too clearly. But on the other hand, I liked the character of Micah. He was very easy to like. I mean, he was kind of gruff. He had a certain day where he cleaned every part of his house. And we find out later that he comes from a family that is the opposite of that. They're messy, they're talking over one another, and he couldn't handle that. So he lives alone, he has a girlfriend, and which he says he doesn't like to call a girlfriend because he's like 40, and so is she, and she's a teacher. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this book. It was breezy. I kind of knew where it was going, but that was okay. And it does have the crisis, the plot points. They're all good. So what can I say bad about this? I gave this 4 stars. And I suggest you read it if you like Ann Tyler's writing, which is it's heartfelt and it's family. You know, she really does quirky characters with family problems really well. So that was the second book I read. The third book I read is the next to last book by Ruth Rendell before she died, and it's called The Girl Next Door. And as you see by the cover, there's a box with two hands holding each other, and it doesn't mean something pretty. But I felt so strongly about this book that I wrote a review on Goodreads, and I'm going to read you parts of it because I think I'm a better writer than I am a extemporaneous speaker. So I'll just read you some lines. I expected a gory thriller, mystery thriller, but instead got literary fiction. Oh, there's the gore, all right. The hands, a pair of hands that were unearthed after 70 years, a male and a female, long gone and forgotten, or maybe not. This is not a perfect book. It has an overly large cast of characters, some improbable scenarios, and a few ridiculous plot twists. But I didn't hate it. It possessed something more important to me than all of these things. It had heart. So I'm trying to read more books about elderly characters who don't fit the stereotype that some society demands. Okay, so Ruth Rendell was in her 80s when she wrote The Girl Next Door. It was her next to last book, like I said before. And since I love to read between the lines, and I talked about this before, about reading Agatha Christie between the lines, I see where her preoccupation lay, was death. She would die within a few years of writing this book. Okay, we open with a villain who confesses to a gory crime. Ruth Rendell likes to open with villains. She likes to open with the villain's point of view. And that's becoming unpopular with today's, and rightfully so, that we should concentrate on victims and not villains. But it's so, in this book, it's almost thrown away. It's just like a prologue. And he confesses to the gory murder that he killed his wife and her lover. And like I said, it's in the prologue. And anyway, it's not the most important part of the story. Neither is the surprising twist at the end. And it was a surprising twist and very satisfying. The beauty of this book is partly the setting. It's a small town in England, some of it taking place during the end of World War II, amid bombings and rationings. And I read that Ruth Rendell was born in Essex, where this fiction town was a fictional village, is her own, and around the same time that she was a child. Although this is not a memoir at all, it shows the author's thinking. It's almost as if she had a premonition that she wouldn't be around for a while, and she wanted to write about people about that age, but at 80, who is around for a while. The children in the novel, because when the novel opens in the last part of World War II, like 1944, a group of friends, they're playing in an earthen tunnel near their house, making it a sort of secret garden. Fast forward 70 years later, yes, 70, I'm not kidding. We find these same children, now senior citizens. Their lives go through turmoil, partly because of the crime committed all those years ago. They meet again, and that's what this book is really about. This book is not directly about the crime, but about life, death, and passion, and how humans can grow and change drastically, no matter what age. Ruth Rendell's voice is very strong in this book. Characters hook up, fight, and die. One romance threatens a long-standing marriage, and other characters are still looking for love, grieving, living. This book teaches young people about passion, and that passion and grief are long life partners. And even though we get old, we don't lose our passion for life. And I love that. And I miss Ruth Rendell. She was a great writer, and she wrote more than just mysteries. And I kind of cried at the end of this book, and the book, like I said, had a very surprising ending that kind of like, whoa, okay. So I gave this book 3.5 stars. I really should have gave it 4 stars, but it does wander a lot, and some of the, like I said, some of the scenarios are very improbable. Not because the characters are old, but just the way the book is written. But I suggest you read this book. It's a different kind of mystery, where the mystery isn't really that much a part of the book, and I like that. So those are the 3 books that I read. Now on to some books that I didn't like as much. I'm in the middle of a book, No One Can Pronounce My Name, a novel by Rakesh Satyal. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He's the winner of the 210 Lambda Literary Award for Gay Debut Fiction and 210 Prose Poetry Award from the Association of Asian American Studies. So he has a great biography. I thought the book, it's about the clash between Eastern and Western cultures. And it has alternating points of view of different Indian characters, and it's very interesting. I thought at first it was a little overwritten, but I have to say that I'm really getting into this book. The different characters are written differently, and a lot of times when you have alternating points of view, different characters, they all sound the same, but he was able to really give me a sense of what it's like for a South Indian living in the States and having to have a culture clash. And I'm really enjoying this book. So now the books I'll just go into. I'm not having a very successful time with my Aussie April. I'm trying a couple of books, and the book that I'm trying very hard to read is a memoir, which might sound funny because I write memoir, and people think, in fact, a librarian told me, I picked this book out for you because I asked for Australian written novels. And it's called Tracks, a woman's solo trek across 1,700 miles of Australian outback. And it's by Robyn Davidson. And I can't get into this book. There's a lot about camels in this book. Everything you want to know about camels. I wasn't that interested in camels. But you might be. But also, I didn't care for the way she writes so far. It seems that we're not getting the reason she's taking this journey. And that's okay, but she goes into so much detail about going into Alice Springs, which is near the desert, and trying to find camels to train. And I just right now can't get into it, but I'm trying. I'm really trying, because it was made into a major motion picture, and it says it's beautiful, thrilling, and ferociously brave. Sorry. I have a hard time pronouncing words, like I said in another video, because a lot of words I've just heard read in books and nobody ever spoke them. But anyway, I'm still going to try with this book because it's got such a good write-up and such good reviews. I'm very tough on memoirs. I critique them, and I'm a better reader for them, as well as editing my own memoir. So I kind of know when the author goes off the track a little bit and goes into too much detail or too much of a self-indulgent mode. And I'm not saying that this author does, but if you've read this book, let me know what you think of it. So far, I'm not going to rate this book because I haven't finished it. A book that I did read is The House on Vesper Sands by Paraic O'Donnell, and I read it for Irish, it was last month. It was Celebration of Irish Literature. And I have to say that I only gave it 1 star because it's not a book for me. You might like it. I would call this a historical Gothic mystery. So if you like that kind of stuff, and you might like it. And it's about, it's a Victorian-inspired mystery, it says. The story of a city cloaked in shadow but burning with questions. And it's basically a mystery novel about some missing women and a seamstress. And I think I told you about it before. In the beginning, she kills herself with a message that she writes on her skin that didn't mean anything really to me. I was very bored during this, but I did finish it. I skimmed through it, and people are ashamed to say they skim through books, but I only had this book to read at the time, and I had to read something because I have to always have a book before I go to sleep. But no, it's not a baby boomer booktuber book. I'm trying to get into an Aussie book called The Secret River. It's won a lot of prizes, and it's basically about the beginnings of Australia, or New South Wales as they called it, where prisoners were sent there instead of going to jail, and they started a new country. And this book is about that. So I'm going to try again. I wanted to also say that I'm not going to put myself into a lot of stress trying to do big hauls and read a lot of books just because that's the Booktube thing to do. I have an anxiety disorder, and during the month of March Mystery Madness, I was going a little mad because I'm a perfectionist, as most people with anxiety disorders are. We're perfectionists, and that makes us anxious. So I was not sleeping well, and I don't want Booktube to become something that's not fun. So I'm going to read, I'm going to still do tags, of course, and I'm going to participate in some of the celebrations of different topics, but I'm not going to put myself into the position where I am not having fun anymore, because I am a lot of fun. So I'm going to end this video with wishing everyone to stay well, because we're going through such tough times right now, and it's a very important time to take care of yourself. And I found that out sort of the hard way. So I'm doing a lot of self-care, and I'm reading books that I want to read, and if I have to, I'm not going to use the word abandon anymore, because it brought to mind, I'm not going to like DNF or abandon a book. I'm going to give up on a book, or just quit a book, because abandon made me think of animals, and animals who are abandoned made me feel like crying. So like I said, I want to be happy. So until we meet the next time on another video, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. And until we meet the next time, which is going to be sooner, aloha, my friends.